everybody, and welcome back to another Doctor Who product review on the Host Productions. In today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at one of the latest releases as a part of the B&M exclusive 2020 series. As in today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at one of two collector sets as a part of a new two-pack series entitled History of the Daleks, capturing the different designs of Dalek throughout the history of Doctor Who. As in today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at the Daleks from the first Doctor story, the Dalek Invasion of Earth, from 1964. This set does of course feature the Supreme Dalek, also known as the Saucer Commander, alongside a standard Invasion of Earth drone Dalek. The recommended retail for this set is £19.99 and it is exclusive to B&M stores throughout the UK. Taking a look at the packaging, this is the same design that we've got used to over the past few years, featuring the TARDIS graphic at one side, the Doctor Who logo at the top corner, the limited edition sticker along the title of the set, and the Carter Options logo. There's a nice preview of the products on the inside of the box, as well as the same information repeated once again, and the continuation of the TARDIS graphic. Flipping around to the back of the box, once again we get the title of the set, along with images for the Daleks on the inside of the box. Towards the sides of this we also get a synopsis of the Dalek Invasion of Earth as a Doctor Who story, as well as rather brilliantly and a lovely inclusion, a write-up about the Dalek props themselves, and talking about their history within Doctor Who production, and discussing the many designs that we got to see throughout this story. Something that is also worth noting is that on the inside of the box we have a little diorama insert featuring the Dalek spaceship, with even a few Daleks on the inside landing in the damaged London landscape. As we can see tilting around to the side here, we have a rather murky sky with a few broken buildings and things, which if you have the space you could definitely display the Daleks within this, and will make a cool little piece to add to the shelf. And I'm glad that the dioramas that started off with the Doctor and TARDIS sets now seem to be expanding out into some of the other areas of the B&M exclusive line. So here we have the so-called Masters of Earth out of the box. Now this is a really exciting opportunity to pick up some classic series Daleks at an affordable price, as although the B&M exclusive series has been going for a number of years now, we've not really had any inclusion of classic series Daleks, and in fact both of the Daleks featured within this collector set have already been released as a part of the classic series line. The Saucer Commander Supreme Dalek is no doubt the main attraction for many, as the original release of this Dalek was way back in 2009 as a part of the San Diego Comic-Con collector sets. This did also come packaged alongside the first Doctor, and as a result, due to it being an SDCC release, it is in fact a rather rare collector's item, although this piece does in fact have a number of differences compared to the original version. And as for the Invasion of Earth drone Dalek, once again this is another considerably rare release as a part of the Sound Effects Daleks range Wave 1 at a recommended retail of around £15 to £20. Naturally this was of course electronic and this one isn't, and of course if you missed out on that original, this makes for a perfect opportunity to add it to your collection. And if you got the original one, you can now buy another one, and then another one, and then another one, and before you know it, you'll have a massive army, because we all love Daleks. So firstly, taking a look at the Invasion of Earth drone Dalek, and doing this review a little bit differently to usual by delving into that comparison first, because no doubt one of the main interests is going to be what is different compared to the original release. So we have the 2020 version on the left and the original version on the right. The first thing to note is that we now have a more metallic shiny finish that has been used on the 2020 version, the same paint application that is also used on the History of the Daleks Collector Set 1, featuring the original variation of Dalek. This does definitely make the silver sections of the Dalek look a lot more vibrant and stand out more on the shelf compared to the original version. One of the other most notable differences for this Dalek is the change in shade of blue on the hemispheres. The 2020 version now uses a darker shade of blue compared to the original version being ever so slightly lighter. The midsection of the Dalek has also received a few subtle changes. For starters, the midsection now uses an ever so slightly darker variation of grey compared to the lighter grey seen on the original release. But not only that, we also have some paint application that has been used on the ball joint of the manipulator arm and gun. This has now been painted silver compared to the standard plastic seen on the original Sound Effects Dalek. We also have a finish that has been applied to the manipulator arm and gun to make them look ever so slightly more shiny compared to the original release. One of the less obvious changes that only sad people like myself recognise is the change in plastic that has been used on the bulbs at the top of the dome. On the 2020 version, this now uses a clear plastic compared to the frosted plastic seen on the original release. Another alteration to the dome is the paint application on the eye stalk. As we can see on the original release, we have a small black band that has been painted on. However, on the 2020 version, this black band does in fact now take up the entirety of the stalk itself. The discs have once again been painted blue, however naturally the new shade has applied to correspond with the hemispheres on the skirt, once again being darker compared to the lighter blue of the original. The tip of the eye stalk has once again been painted silver, with the inclusion of a black ring and the white iris in the very middle. Turning around to the back of the Dalek, we have the inclusion of the solar disc, which is rather unique, and I do believe it only appeared within the Dalek Invasion of Earth. Now once again, this is exactly the same sculpt to usual, however it seems the type of plastic has been changed on the 2020 release. It now has a glossy grey finish compared to the lighter matte grey seen on the SFX Dalek. And then finally, to summarise for the differences compared to the original, we have some weathering that has been applied to the large bumper fender. This is no doubt the biggest selling point for those collectors that have the original release, and to be honest, although it is a very small and minor change, it is actually a welcome one. It adds a rather realistic element to this Dalek that wasn't present on the original release, and to be honest, it's something that was very simply achieved. As per usual, we have the large fender that has been painted a standard matte black. However, over the top of this we've had a weathering wash that has been applied. In some areas it's a little bit more prominent than others, so as we can see we have a few brush strokes of it around here collecting. We even have a little mark of blue there from the hemisphere, which admittedly is probably not meant to be there, and then this even collects around the back as well. It makes the Dalek look very much like how it would have done within the TV production back in 1964, thrown together and no doubt quite worn from rattling around the streets of London. And that is basically it for the Dalek Invasion of Earth Drone Dalek. Overall, a lovely addition to the collection, especially if you don't have the original release, and if you do have the original release, this is a perfect opportunity to army build. It's also great to see that there is some paint application changes in there to kind of still maintain the rarity of the original version, and it is better to have something that's subtly a little bit different as opposed to just being identical, because then it is a little bit boring, and at the end of the day, if you change something ever so slightly, you get sad collectors like myself no doubt buying this whole set again simply to add that minor change to their collection. Let's face it, we all relate to that. Love the inclusion of the large fender at the very bottom, very rarely seen within classic series Doctor Who. I also love the inclusion of the solar disc there at the back as well, again only seen throughout the Dalek Invasion of Earth. However, it is also worth noting that of course alongside this set there was also released the History of the Daleks Set 1, featuring the first ever version of Dalek. Basically the top half of this Dalek is pretty much the same to that other version, just with the large piece stuck on the bottom, and of course the alteration to the eye stalk. But hey, a Dalek is a Dalek, and we all love collecting Daleks. Next up, Saucer Commander on the bridge. It is of course the Supreme Dalek, or Saucer Pilot, or Saucer Commander, or the Black Dalek, or whatever you wish to call it. It goes by many names. This Dalek, as I mentioned earlier on, is no doubt the main attraction for this set because it was originally an SDCC release, and that does of course translate as being very rare indeed, and no doubt most likely very, very expensive. So this one is again, much like the Drone Dalek, very similar to the original version, however subtly rather different to actually make it a worthy variant from the original to add to your collection if you still have the original one, and it also maintains the rarity of the original as well, which is always pretty welcome. And even though I've got the original, I still like this Dalek. I think it's lovely. So much like how we did with the Invasion of Earth Drone Dalek, starting off with that comparison, in other words trying to justify spending £19.99 on a Dalek that you've already owned for literally 10 years and looks very, very similar. Well, long story short, there is a number of differences which do make this Dalek stand out ever so slightly more than the original. To start off with, the black that has been used on this Dalek overall is ever so slightly more glossy and shiny compared to the matte colour used on the original version, in a rather similar way that the silver metallic paint application on the drone makes that Dalek stand out compared to the original. And speaking of those metallic paint apps, we once again see those silver sections returning on this Dalek, especially around this midsection here, and of course on the barrel section at the midpoint. Giving a close-up on those Dalek hemispheres once again on the 2020 version, we see a darker blue that has been used compared to the lighter blue seen on the 2009 SDCC variation. Following a similar design change to that of the Invasion Earth drone Dalek, this time round on the 2020 version, the ball joints have been once again painted as silver compared to the standard plastic seen on the 2009 release. Probably what is one of the most obvious differences with this Dalek is the colouring on the disc seen at the back. On the initial 2009 version, this was painted as silver to correspond with the midsections placed around the weaponry. However, on the 2020 version, this has used once again exactly the same colour scheme to the Invasion of Earth drone Dalek from the 2020 set, being a glossy grey, with once again the stump placed in the middle. I think these were for so the Daleks could move around London or something like that from out of their spaceship, or it might be so they can get broadband, don't quite know which. And then finally, moving up to the top of the dome of the Dalek, once again we have the inclusion of the ear bulbs. These do once again appear to be a clear plastic on the 2020 version, compared to the ever so slightly frosted plastic seen on the 2009 version. And then of course we have the eye stalk, which has received a rather striking change. On the original this was painted silver, very much like the vast majority of Daleks. However, rather unusually, this does have a different shade of blue compared to the hemispheres on the skirt. This time round on the 2020 version of Saucer Commander Dalek, we have the dark blue discs featured on the eye stalk. However, this is the same blue that has been used on the hemispheres on the skirt. And then of course the most obvious difference from this is we have this black section here that has been used on the Dalek stalk as opposed to the silver seen on this version. And then turning to the tip of the eye stalk, we also have a change that is rather similar to the history of the Daleks Set 1, where the pupil has been altered in size. This time round we have a rather small white dot that has been applied within the black of the eye stalk itself, compared to the rather large white circular section seen on the original 2009 release. The fender of the Supreme Dalek has once again received a light grey wash to give the appearance that this Dalek has been damaged whilst manoeuvring around the streets of London. Again, the same thing applies to the drone Dalek. This is a lovely inclusion and a worthy variant change compared to its original releases. That is the Supreme Dalek. Overall, again, a lovely colour scheme and it looks very smart. Something that I would point out, and something that occurs quite a lot with the B&M exclusive collector sets, and something that even applied to the Forbidden Planet exclusive range, especially when it came to Classic Series Daleks, I recommend going in store and properly scrutinising the Daleks you are about to purchase, because sometimes the hemispheres can have paint leaks, and especially in the case of this Dalek, when you have a darker blue leaking onto a black, it is very obvious. So yeah, I do recommend taking a look at the quality control on the paint application, but to be honest, overall for this set I'm in fact quite impressed. I think the colour overall is lovely, it's a decent improvement from the original, although that said it's not too distant from the original to the extent where it's a completely different Dalek. Don't get me wrong, it's very similar to the original, nearly identical. However, the changes that have been made are worth it, I would say, although it's one for collectors as opposed to occasional fans, especially if you have the original already. So with that does of course conclude my review of the history of the Daleks Set 2, featuring two 1960s Daleks from the Dalek Invasion of Earth. Now I must admit, when this set was initially announced, I wasn't particularly that excited by it, because I have the original counterparts, and at first glance, both of these Daleks look virtually identical to the original versions. However, now I've got this set in hand, it is very obvious that there is a number of changes, and those changes are pretty welcome. I love the silver metallic design that has been applied to the drone Dalek, and equally I also love the darker blue highlights that have been given to both of the Daleks, as was the glossy black finish that has been given to the Supreme. Does it justify another purchase? I said if you are a fan of Daleks and love collecting them, then yeah, by all means go and buy this set. It's decent, it's a variant, and let's face it, who doesn't mind the odd variant here and there? However, if you are a collector who is perhaps concerned about money, or simply wants to purchase purchased the other sets and is concerned that they're not going to be able to buy the whole series, then this is probably a set that should be lower on your priority, because the changes really probably aren't that worth it, as I say, if you are an occasional collector. If you are somebody who doesn't have any Classic Series Daleks, then most definitely purchase this collector set. For £19.99 you cannot go wrong. Two really lovely designs of Dalek that will look absolutely brilliant on the shelf, and of course it's also a perfect opportunity to army build if you wish to create a Dalek army. So thank you once again for watching this review, and do of course stay tuned on the Host Productions for brand new Doctor Who content each and every week, as well as the continuation of this B&M review series. So thanks for watching, have a nice day, I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.